I'm not even being snarky. I just don't think of a sports guy.
What about riding around a golf cart? Doesn't that count?
Right. But you, on the other hand, I get, you said that being a sports guy helped him.
Well,
what did you mean by that?
Because what happened is that a lot of African Americans, Latinos, and others, we associated ourselves with him because he would host fights at drunk casinos. He would show up at basketball games and stuff like that. So there was a lot of things that he showed during his time as president that we never saw. Okay, and me personally, I was one of the few that had communicated with him in 2014.
His unapologetic personality, that's for one.
This is a true story, and I've said this publicly on several occasions. Donald Trump called me, and he wanted to purchase the Buffalo Bills. And the price tag was at about $1.4 billion at that time. He had about $1.1 billion.
He did?
And that's what he said. That's what they said. I'm just telling you what they said, what I was told. And he called me and he said, I'm trying to buy the Bills, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, quote, Stephen A., if them get in my way, I'm going to get them all back. I'm going to run for president. That's exactly what he said. And so when I tell this story to folks in the NFL, they said, so it's our fault. I said, basically, that I joke around about it, but obviously, they felt.
It's the NFL's fault. Hey, kudos to the NFL, man. No tax on overtime, no tax on tips. Bye-bye fentanyl. We'd love to see it.
The way that they felt, but he was a guy that really ingratiated himself with a lot of different communities and what have you. And so some of the things that we saw in an effort for him to appeal to his base, per se, we didn't see that. And we never got that impression from him. And the reason why that's so important is that when you've seen others come out and, dare I say, maybe not in support of him, but they didn't excoriate him to the degree that others may have preferred us to do so on the left, we deduced it to he's saying whatever it takes to cater to that base to get himself elected because he will do what's expedient. So if you show him that I'll get votes this way.
No, he's cooking right now. He's cooking.
He doesn't care. He'll deal with the fallout later. The objective for him is to win first and then address things later on. That's always been his MO, and that's what we've seen.
Yeah. Well, I want to go back to what you said about black men being very comfortable with matriarchy, and I agree with that because black households are often led by a grandmother, black grandmother or black mother. However, 55% of Latino men voted for Trump. Why do you think that happened?
Well, I think that economically,
because people are waking up.
We're looking at things
regardless of age, race, gender.
You've got, in this country, you've got Cubans, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Guatemalans, Venezuelans, Colombians, et cetera, et cetera. And if you talk to the Hispanic community, depending on who you're talking to, they think differently. The Cubans think differently than the Dominicans. The Dominicans think different than Colombians. To some, the economy was a priority. To some, believe it or not, it was the border. You had some folks within the Hispanic populace that were encouraging the borders to be closed.
They want to pull the.
But here's why that's so imperative. It's so important. Because we're not Latinos. They're telling you that's what we want. Yeah. We had to stay online. We had to be online in order to get in. Who are you to bypass the line? And one of my friends, I remember he used this analogy, and I never forget this as long as I live. He said, you like Six Flags, go to Great Adventures? I said, I have. He said, sure. Disney World? Sure, I have. Of course I have. He said, so you stand in line, It take about 2 hours to get on some of these rides because they're that popular. He said, and right before it's time for you to get on that line, somebody jumps in front of you. What you gonna do? And he said that kind of mentality is how you have folks within the Latino, within the Hispanic community, some of them, not all, but some of them who view immigration that way. So again, when you think about
that's a pretty interesting analogy right there. You got to admit.
Economics, when you think about immigration, those two things are what I have found has influenced the Hispanic vote one way or the other.
So the assault on Puerto Rico, calling it a garbage island, didn't really affect.
I think it didn't matter as much as in Allentown and in Philadelphia. But like you said, I'm Puerto Rican, right? So the Hispanic community is not a monolith. I agree with you. And a lot of, I think, people that are of Hispanic origin from, let's say, South America or Central America, they're willing to close the door behind them instead of letting somebody else.
The other important thing to recognize is this, and I've said this often. When we look at the economy, I remember when Biden came into the office, he inherited about 1.5% inflation. It ballooned to about 9.1% before it ultimately came down to where it is now, right? That doesn't mean anything to minorities.
It's just awful.
Sorry, y'all. I don't got premium, man. My apologies. But this is some good content right here. Make sure you guys hit that like button. We just hit 1,000 people. We're trying to hit about 50 to 100 likes, so we appreciate y'all.
Inflation, and here's the percentage. How much does gas cost? How much does the groceries cost, okay? How much does rent cost? How much does my mortgage cost? That's what folks pay attention to, what's actually in their wallet. And I often hearken to the sport of
what we're actually paying at the grocery stores, what we're actually paying at the gas pumps.
Baseball in this regard, when you had people looking at numbers in baseball and they say, how come the black representation, how come the numbers are not larger? Well, historically, black folks don't trust the system. So if you can go into the NBA at the age of 19, if you got to do 2 years in college to play football before you go pro, well, in baseball, yeah, you could get drafted, but you got to go to AAA, AA, single A, that kind of thing, before you hope they bring you into the sport of baseball. Well, that's a time issue where I have to literally trust that you ultimately will see my progress and you will reward me accordingly. I don't know too many minorities that want to trust the system. And so when people speak, although you're right and righteous with your emotion and your righteous indignation, other people are saying we have the right to have righteous indignation when it comes to our pocket, or when it comes to our lifestyle, or when it comes to our environment.
Hey, Stephen A. cooking right now. Hey, cook.
We see crimes in the streets and stuff like that. We see homelessness and it's ballooned. We got a problem with that, and we don't believe this person is the answer compared to that. So what? They might have insulted a bunch of people. We don't like it. We hate it. But in the end, it's not more important than my pocketbook.
But you know what? But you know what? That doesn't mean that we should not continue to educate ourselves to how our pocketbooks got to it. And that's the problem. That's what you were talking about. That fringe thing, if you don't know why your stuff is gone, do your homework. But you know what? That takes time, and it requires you to commit to do that work to figure it out. And they're not going to do it.
Most people are not going to do
No.
You've been asked, I hear, about running for political office in the future. And some people have said that they could see you running for president. Would you do that? You think you qualify to run for president? I mean, the bar's pretty low anyway.
Stephen A. for mayor, governor, and bar's pretty low is crazy.
I do not.
Can you rephrase that?
Notice that shy, right?
I mean, I just think that the bar is really low because Trump really had no political experience and went from 0 to 100, right? He didn't start the city council and stuff like that. So the bar is low. Anyone can run.
I have said this on many occasions. The answer would be hell no, because I like my life. I'm living a pretty good life. But I must confess, I wish I could debate some of these guys. I'd love to be on a debate stage going up against these guys with the presidency on the line.
Don't say that, because you know we will arrange that.
And you know, I'm half joking, but I kind of mean it. I mean, I have no desire to be a congressional figure or a senator. But if you came to me and you told me I had a legitimate shot to win the presidency of the United States of America, I would definitely consider it. But here's the problem.
So you want to break through the line?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yes, absolutely. For that, yes, because others have. Okay, including Democrats, by the way. I mean, they broke the line. What's wrong with me doing it? But I would be independent because I don't like either side, and I'm not going to be bought and paid for. I'm going to do what I believe is in the best interest of the American people, whatever that may be, and I'm going to make my decisions and I'm going to stand on it.
And that's what most people say when they run, and then they get in there and it's like, hey, you can't make that decision without us. And it's like, well, where did you come from?
But that's because they're at the mercy of the pocketbooks on either side, because they know that it takes money to campaign, run commercials. Look at what Trump did in terms of the commercials that he was running against Kamala Harris. He spent millions upon millions of dollars, you know, doing what he did. And you need the money in order to.
And the left thankfully paid Cardi B millions of dollars to help endorse Trump. That performance, reading off the phone, that was truly one of the greatest endorsements that we never paid for. Kudos to the left. Thank y'all.
No. But if I didn't need it, please, it was just us going on a debate stage and let's talk about the issues that affect America. Name the time and place.
So listen, what's one of the biggest things you want to see taken out of politics?
Lobbyists.
Money.
Why? Do tell.
Because the politicians are bought and paid for.
They are.
On both
Especially
sides. When you look at the Democratic and the Republican National
He cooking.
conventions. Look at the suites. Who are in the suites? They're billionaires. They're running the show. We all know this. And so as a result, not to be disrespectful to our elected politicians, but to some degree, they are puppets. You have to succumb to the pockets of other people. They influence things. They're not giving you this money for nothing. And I don't want to do that.
I do want to ask you one thing, because some people are calling this the podcast election, the outsized weight that people like Joe Rogan had and some of these other.
Absolutely. That interview with Joe Rogan and Donald Trump, like I said, it shifted the minds of the young people. I knew what it did for me. So I can only imagine the impact it had on others that heard Orange Man bad their whole time of Trump. Oh, Orange Man bad. Grab him by the crotch. And then when you look at the man's actions, when you look at the things that he's done for the American people, and you're like, wow, mainstream media is a thing. Like, no, there is fake news.
Figures. Do you think it mattered or was a mistake that Kamala Harris didn't go on his podcast?
I think it was a huge mistake for her not to go on Joe Rogan. The man has over 17 million subscribers. He was going to have.
We said this so many times on our live streams.
Say he refused to endorse any candidate before he endorsed RFK Jr. Okay, we understand that. And when you know that Trump is going to do it, I really, really believe wholeheartedly that wherever Trump